Yeah, Cinzia, I said your name right, correct?
You did.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
on the podcast. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Cuyo Chico, which is right above Pisac in the Sacred Valley in Peru.
Yeah, your studio looks familiar. I think we had Luke Jensen on the other week from the same studio.
Yes, it was highly recommended, and it's really beautiful up here. So very thankful
Yeah.
for that.
So can you share with the listeners who aren't aware yet, what are you doing down in Peru?
All sorts of things that really surprised me. I work at a retreat center. I'm a facilitator and a translator there. I'm also serving medicine at this retreat center. I'm serving Sapo Bufo Alvarious. And then outside of that, I'm serving Huachuma. I recently got initiated into serving Huachuma San Pedro cactus, which has been a very big privilege and honor for me to be even walking this path. And then I'm a silversmith. I have my studio at home. I have an animal sanctuary. I have about 30 some odd animals from dogs, cats to sheep and cows, bull. I then work with Luke Jensen with NeuroEnlightenment, brain mapping, pre and post maps, and working with neurofeedback and plant medicine. And then we have our retreat now, Tiwaz Awakening, that we're launching. We have our third one coming up the 15th of September to the 24th.
Amazing. And so I read a little bit of your bio. You were born in Peru, grew up in Miami, and now you're back in Peru.
Yes.
Can you fill in a little bit of the story of how you ended up back there, like how you left and then how you came back?
How I left. So I was born in Lima in 1986, and I didn't grow up in Peru at all. And my family ultimately moved to Germany. We were in Europe for some time. And around the time I turned 7 in Miami, and then I was in the States up until I was 29. And I returned to Peru in 2013 for the first time. And this was a really big pilgrimage for me. I wanted to get to know my country. I wanted to know and see where I came from. And I did a month-long tour from Lima to southern Peru and then back up to Cusco. And at no point did I know anything about plant medicines at all. But in Cusco, interestingly enough, or very serendipitously, you meet one person and another person. It was like taking a stone step. Every step led to another person. And then suddenly I'm drinking Huachuma San Pedro cactus outside of the Temple of the Moon in Cusco. And there was a group of 7 of us. And there was only another Peruvian guy and myself. His name was Angel, of course. And I had said my intention that I wanted to get to know my father, where he came from, because he passed away when I was 17. And at no point have him and I, this guy, Angel, and I spoken, but he turns to me maybe 2 hours into the ceremony, we're like deep in the medicine. And he turns to me and he tells me, he's like, if you want to get to know your father, you have to get to know your country. And that was really poignant for me, and I sobbed hysterically for a while as well afterwards. And coming to Peru was the first time I felt roots or groundedness, because Miami is very transient, very competitive. There's a lot of movement. And this was the first time that I felt really, really grounded, like my feet belonged here. And so I
Mhm.
went back to Miami for a couple more years, and then ultimately taking that leap with my partner at the time, who I'll always be really thankful to him for this, because he gave me that push. Like, he's like, hey, if we're gonna move, let's do the big move. And we moved to Peru. And we came with 4 suitcases, 3 cats, and $6,000 in savings, and absolutely no plan.
Wow.
And I've been here almost 11 years now.
Amazing. And were you working with plant medicine like all along the way for that 11 years?
Not at all. I was complete hermit. I took basic silversmithing classes here in PSAC, basic soldering, and something I always wanted to do. And I got the opportunity to take classes. It was much more affordable here than it would have been in Miami. And then I took that and ran with it and kept experimenting. You try to find your own style, your own artistic expression. And silversmithing is so fascinating because it's alchemy. You're taking this perceivably immalleable product or silver metal, and you can create organic shapes out of it, like really, really beautiful stuff. And the style or the artistic expression that I ended up finding for myself really became prominent during the pandemic, the lockdown, because one, there's nowhere to go. So you got to find solace in something. And I found a lot of solace in that, just like tinkering away like
Interesting.
Gollum.
What kind of stuff are you making?
A lot of what I do is heavily inspired by the hikes that I do around the valley. So I love catching those like really small micro ecosystems that flourish in decaying trees and things like that. So like those tiny mushrooms, little ferns, all of that, that little world that exists just momentarily, right? It arises from death, it has a little life, and it turns and becomes a little death, and it keeps going. And that just reminded me of life as well. Like we have so many little deaths through our lives, different points, different choices, things that lead you to very unexpected places.
Yeah, I think some people say the only constant is change.
Exactly. Yeah. And to be able to enjoy both of those aspects, right? Like that creation and then that death, because then it continues. Yeah.
Hmm. It never really ends. It just kind of transforms, right?
Exactly. And I think that's so beautiful. And that we have that opportunity as human beings to constantly transform. And we can mourn those things and those decisions, but with every decision, you create a little death and a new life, a new way to flow and move through the world and with yourself.
Transformation is becoming a big theme on the podcast because we have a lot of people who have worked with plant medicine, and that's, as you know, very well known for its transformative properties. Um, so you went to Peru in 2013 and
Mhm.
you had a Huachuma journey, and then you moved there and you were into silversmithing. And and you said you weren't working with any plant medicines. So how did you then come to be serving medicine?
Yeah, I kind of ask myself that as well. How did I get here? But it's kind of a running joke that I have with my colleagues too. It's like, how did we get here? But we know how we got here, and it was very challenging to get here. So I celebrate that very much. I So right after or near the end of the pandemic or the lockdown, where they're opening things up again, my husband and I at the time we had been separated but living together for probably 4 years. And all of this pressure cooker with a pandemic, finally we looked at each other. It's like, well, I love you, I don't like you. And we're living half lives and we're torturing each other because we're comfortable in this suffering and this pain. And one, it was very liberating and also very painful, because 10 years is a long time. We met when I was 25. We moved to a different country and continent together. And then you realize that, well, you're going to mourn a lot of different things, the relationship, what it was, what it could have been, and all these things. So we ended our relationship, and I realized that I was extremely lonely. And I had no friends. I'd been living like a hermit for a really long time with my silversmithing, with my animals at the edge of a marsh in this house, very isolated. And I loved it. But, things need to change as well. And I reached out to a friend who I knew trained Muay Thai. And I messaged him. I was like, hey, I'm looking for someone who teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so he introduced me to Bruno Momeni. And probably a week after I sent that message, I started jiu-jitsu. And then about 4 months after of finding this community and training, and it changed my life, finding that brotherhood, camaraderie, and finding myself, like testing myself in a whole new way. I ended up meeting Luke in jiu-jitsu. Where all great love stories begin. We're trying to choke each other. And I think he'd been in the valley maybe a year and a half, and he had come with the idea to combine QEEG, brain maps, and plant shamanism and neurofeedback. And he pitched me his idea, and I thought it was fascinating. And it felt like it was in that moment in my life where it's like, I want something more. And this appeared, and I resonated with it. And so we got together and we ran around the valley for 2 years, going to different retreat centers, pitching our idea and getting a lot of rejection. And I think it had to do a lot with who are we? And it's also very challenging to explain, that these are things are possible with neurofeedback, with brain training, that we can see this trauma, that we can help train it away, that we can help you reconnect with your own soul, because we think that technology is separating you from it. And we're presenting an idea that technology can bring you back to yourself, you
I
know?
love that.
And And then he wanted to volunteer at one retreat place that has consistent groups. And I have a friend who works there, and he asked me, well, Cinzia, would you be interested in coming in and volunteering? We need a woman and we need a translator. And there was so much resistance. Who am I to be in this space? I don't think I can translate very well. And because of, I know myself well enough that if there's so much resistance, it's probably really good for me. So I went in with it, still not having any idea as to what my role was or if I would do it well. And it really worked out for me. It did. Turns out I'm quite good, you know. And then this evolved where they asked me if I wanted to translate the Huachuma ceremonies every Friday, and this is how I met my brother, my teacher, my Huachumero Alcides, and through the way that he carries medicine and through working with him, like I translate from 11 a.m. to about 6 p.m. That's the length of our ceremony, and I'm translating all the time. But his messages are so simple and yet impactful. And it's about love and forgiveness and stepping into your authentic self, how you carry your own medicine, you know. And one thing that I love so much about him is that he says, I don't want to be a maestro. I want to be myself. And to carry medicine in that way, in that humility, he's taught me so much. He helped me, you know, he would tell me, Cinzia, open your heart. And I'm like, what does that mean? You know, for us Westerners, it's like, what does that mean? Open your heart. And because you want to intellectualize it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, you have to feel it. You have to feel it, you know, and and alongside opening your heart, that means feeling the really heavy stuff, the sadness, the grief, the guilt, all those things that we just run from. Because if you want to feel love and you want to feel happiness, you have to feel the antithesis of it, you know, the other part. You have to be open to everything. You can't just like close up little things and let in whatever you want. Anyhow, so working with him led to us then working outside of the retreat center and taking guests or other people up the mountain and having ceremony, drinking Huachuma and going on these beautiful hikes and connecting with nature and connecting with ourselves, connecting with our bodies, with our breath, you know, taking that ceremony and making it part of your life in real time. And then he initiated me into serving medicine in July of this year, so just quite recently.
Wow.
And so
Amazing.
now I'm here, you know, and yeah, it really resonated with me because one, it helped me begin to heal myself. And like I mentioned to you yesterday, when you share medicine, when you carry medicine, you're imparting the spirit of the medicine, but you're also imparting yourself, you know. So you have to do the deep work. You have to be in integrity and discipline with yourself. You can't pretend this, you know, and you have to be authentic.
Thank you for sharing that and I love his message about stepping into your authentic self. I heard they did some studies like at Harvard or something where they measured the kind of, I think it's a vibration or a frequency, maybe it comes out of your brain or your body. And the highest frequency that they could measure was authenticity, when
Oh,
someone
wow.
is being authentic.
That's really
Um,
cool. I'd love to see that.
yeah, you mentioned so many things that I want to ask you about. Thank you for sharing all these things. Can you
Thank you for letting
tell
me pontificate.
for sure, I love it. You mentioned you learn to heal yourself, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, maybe a little bit about like what you healed and like how'd you do that?
So I, for a long time, I thought that trauma was either physical or sexual. I did not realize that there are all sorts of different kinds of traumas. And a traumatic event can ultimately be any time that you don't feel like you have control and you feel unsafe. So there can be so many things. And a lot of those come in childhood. You know, our most formative years, like our core belief systems, our core patterns have developed between the ages of 0 and 7. And when I was 3 years old, my earliest memory, because I don't have memories up until about 7, it's a trauma response as well. So at 3 years old, my parents separated, and I'm three, so there wasn't much of an explanation. And I just remember my mom leaving and being with my dad and my brother, and my dad telling me, "Don't cry, you'll make your brother cry." I don't think I ever cried after that. Those
Wow.
little things that you keep forever. And so in this journey and working at the retreat space, you hear people's stories and you hear their story and you realize that, hey, that's my story. I know what that feels like. I may not have experienced that exact same situation, but I know what that feels like. I know what that abandonment feels like. I know where that self-worth comes in, or lack thereof, right? So in this untangling of myself, or like untying those knots, which I did not know realize that were there, I realized that I had a lot of abandonment and how it had affected me all of my life. And in very subtle ways, which were the most shocking, and also in very big ways, and a lot of behavior patterns, or a lot of personality traits that I thought were my personality traits, ended up being self-defense mechanisms.
Mm.
So, we have freeze, flight, fawn, and I would freeze. I would disassociate and I disassociate in a quite a big way, where it might be a day or two, maybe 3 days. And I remember this also when I was a teenager, but I would get very, very quiet. And I would get so quiet where I'd be unable to speak. Like it would be physically impossible for me to speak.
Wow.
Couldn't smile, things like that, because you're so frozen in this like survival hibernation that it takes a long time to get out of it. Your whole system shuts down because we're hardwired for survival. And so I went through a lot of that. And what helped me so much, one, was informing myself about trauma responses, right? If you have to start reading, you have to start investigating. And one of the things that was extremely impactful, one was meeting Luke, getting my brain map, and then seeing like, okay, I had markers for anxiety, depression. I had markers for like difficulties with emotional integration, things like that, sense of self, and hypervigilance. So it was really challenging for me to relax or even close my eyes during the day because I had to make sure that everything was okay. And
Wow.
these were not conscious things. It was just part of my programming that I thought
Mm.
was me, and it wasn't. So we started a particular protocol called Alpha Theta, and it puts you in a hypnagogic state. So it's kind of that trancey state before you wake up. You're not totally asleep, right? And it would mean headphones, listening to tones, and having my eyes closed. And at first, I was so resistant. It was like, you want me to do what? Close my eyes in the middle of the day, listen to tones, have headphones on? Like, this is uncomfortable. And so I began doing it. And I didn't have dreams for 10 years, which is another trauma response. I just thought this was normal. And through this untangling of my subconscious, through this protocol where you're listening to these tones, I have now extremely vivid dreams, prophetic dreams, messages in my dreams, finding again my sense of self and releasing trauma in a way that's not so charged.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that significantly helped me finally finding a good therapist who gave me that space to let me know, hey, it's okay to feel your feelings. Someone
Hmm.
to just hear you and validate you and tell you it's okay to feel that.
Hmm.
How impactful that is to
Yep.
get that permission.
Was I think you told me the other day, didn't you mention that once you found a really good therapist, they said something really beautiful,
Oh,
like
yeah.
along the lines of like your 3-year-old, that must have been so much on your 3-year-old body. Or
Yeah, it was imagine though, it was just last August, so just a year ago, we were talking and she started asking me about the abandonment. And I told her my earliest memory, which was that memory of my mom leaving. And she just looked at me and bless her, I'll always appreciate her so much for this. She said, that must have been so challenging for your little body to handle. And immediately I got set back to that space of being like 3-year-old Cinzia and not
Mhm.
knowing what to do with those big feelings, not having an idea. Where do they go? Where do they go? Where do they go? And nobody talks to you and nobody says anything and you just bury it. You bury it. You bury it forever until it comes out, you know. I
You
still
were
have to.
probably you were thank you for sharing your story, by the way. You were probably sounds like you were carrying that hypervigilance probably since 3 years old with and not
Yeah.
and having no idea of that.
Yeah. No clue
How many
whatsoever.
people in the world do you think are carrying things like this and they just have no idea?
Probably all of us.
Everyone.
Everyone in different degrees and of severity. And that's the thing about the plant medicine space and these retreats, right? It's like you feel finally something, hey, is this me or something's off? And I think when people answer that call to make these treks out to Peru or Brazil or wherever to have these plant medicine experiences, I really think it's your soul calling out to you like, hey, let's do something for each other. Let's do something that will help you feel more whole. You know, I think that's what we're all striving for ultimately. That I think that's what healing is, to
I
feel more
agree.
self.
Yeah, I agree. Or striving to remember that you are whole.
Exactly. Because again, like, so I had these experiences, right? But the narratives I told myself from, early childhood, high school, my 20s, my 30s, I told myself those narratives. I told myself that story. The people that you love will leave you. You don't deserve love. You have to validate your existence. You have to prove that you are meant to be alive. These are things I told myself.
Mm.
So, in the healing that comes with, okay, these situations happened, but what did I do to me? I know how I abandoned myself. I know how I recreated those situations. I know how I recreated those feelings. And then that's that deep reckoning, that very deep self reflection, self inventory. Okay, where is my responsibility? And then forgiving yourself for it. And you can't do this intellectually. You have to start feeling it. So you go back to those big feelings, feeling that grief, feeling all that to get to the other side.
Mhm. And so I know you work in your practice and at Tiwaz, you guys are doing a lot of physical activity. And is that part of it? Because I guess a lot of the healing is sort of taking place in like a non-verbal space in the psyche.
Right.
So is that one of the reasons why you guys do a lot of physical stuff at Tiwaz? Can you talk a little bit about the
Sure.
physical stuff that you do and the sort of holistic benefits that brings?
Most definitely. So I've always been, I think, as a result of how much used to disassociate, and mind you, all that's not gone. That still happens to me, but on a significantly less severe level, where like I can observe it as opposed to it becoming this massive
What's it
black.
like for someone listening who doesn't know, what's it like disassociating? What is that like?
So at least for me, it's almost like I leave my body and I'm very constant. I go into my head. So everything goes numb. Everything goes really numb. And I can feel like really, really separate from myself, as if there's a filter or as if almost like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
It can go really deep. Um,
So I have a good therapist as well, and I recently told her, I said, "Hey, I don't smoke any pot or anything, but sometimes I will just feel like I'm stoned out of nowhere." And I kind
mm,
of get kind of a soft focus, kind of my view kind of goes a little soft, a little blurry, and I feel like kind of stony out of nowhere.
mm,
She goes, "That's disassociation."
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
so
you don't know unless you inform yourself because you think it's your normal. You're
I
part of
never
your,
heard of that. I This was like a couple months ago I learned about this.
yeah.
So so thank
Yeah.
you for coming on and sharing with the world.
Well,
Um but I'm sorry I cut you off because I wanted that to share. I wanted the
oh, no.
audience, if they weren't sure, to have a better idea what that meant. But we were talking about what you guys do at Tiwaz, like physically, and the benefits you've seen from the kind of holistic approach to healing with physical modalities as well.
Right. So I think because of that disassociation that I would go through, I've always been really physical. So I like working out. I joined gymnastics. Artistic gymnastics was a dream of mine. since I was a little girl and I never got to live that out. So when I turned 27, I found an adult gymnastics class in Miami and I joined. I was the only adult surrounded by 6 and 7 year olds who were very strong and very limber. But I was there for 2 years and that gave me a really solid foundation. And also just don't limit yourself. You know, if you have that dream, go do it, as silly as it may be. And
Even if you're
gymnastics,
going to take the class with a bunch of kids, you
yeah,
do
and
it.
it was worth it. It was really worth it. And so I carried gymnastics over here into Peru, and then I trained myself in soft acrobatics. Like I would steal like those power moves from capoeira and things like that. And then jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu has been such medicine for me because you release a lot of oxytocin. You know, they've done studies on it, like Psychology Today posted an article about the impact in mood that physical contact can give you through jiu-jitsu. And
Interesting.
yeah, like sure, we're trying to choke each other out and all these things, but like there's also a hug involved, you know? And one, the community aspect and the brotherhood, like you make friends and that's so healing and you find tons of support. And within that, you have to overcome yourself, right? So when you start being inside control or having this person who's bigger than you, like on top of you, and you not feeling like you have sufficient air, you have to overcome that survival instinct. You know, you have to, okay, I'm gasping for air. Let me moderate my breath now. Let me come back to my body. Let me realize that, hey, I can think here. I can plan an escape or what is my best move here. So all of that is very similar to a plant medicine experience, right? Because you got nowhere to go. All you have to do is breathe and trust. And it's very similar. So you have to trust yourself and your partner that you're sparring with, things like that. So for us, for Luke and I, jiu-jitsu has been so healing, another modality. It's not so intellectual. And maybe sometimes it's not so ooey gooey with the feelings, but it's like, hey, let's put it into practice. And within the community, we've met the rest of our team that makes up Tiwaz. Luis, who is our filmmaker, Natalia, who's his partner and does yoga with us, Bruno, our black belt, who teaches. All these beautiful people came into our lives, and that's one of the main reasons that we wanted to share that. You know, my mom
Yeah.
came to our first retreat. Actually, my mom came to the first and second, and she did jujitsu. I'm 60 years old, and she's never done anything like this in her life. And at first, she's like, "Really? I have to do this? Like, try it out. It'll be fun." And she had a really good time as soon as she knew she could put elbows into people's
Oh,
chests.
nice. Nice. And
You
so
know,
she did MMA for the first time, and did she do plant medicine for the first time too?
she had drank ayahuasca with me once before in December of 2019.
Mhm.
And so when she came to our first retreat, that was her first time doing 3 ceremonies back to back, and then Huachuma. And then she came back for the second retreat and she did the other 3 and another Huachuma. And
Wow.
yeah,
It-
it's really beautiful to have my mom there, you know.
yeah, I'm curious, do you feel like you strengthened your connection with her or healed parts of your connection with her?
Most definitely. We talked a lot about maybe some people in astrology will understand this, but my mom's a Gemini. So they don't, you know, talk about the past very much. It's very airy. She's like, "Oh, it's over. I don't think about it." I'm like, "Okay." You know, like I think about stuff. So through our experience, well, through her experience with ayahuasca, it really opened her up to acknowledge some things that I wasn't expecting. It was during our second retreat, after our second ayahuasca ceremony, where we do the group share at the end of the ceremony versus the next day.
Mhm.
She turns to me and she tells me, Cinzia, I'm very sorry that I didn't hug you enough as a kid.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know, it was
Wow.
really good to hear. I wasn't expecting it. And it was really powerful. So, like these little things, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's beautiful. So, and did she do the brain mapping too, or no?
Yeah, she did the brain mapping. She did the whole thing. She's been our number one supporter in all of this. You know, it's been a blessing. It's been incredible.
I love that. Is she based in the US or is she down there with you?
She's in California. She's in Hermosa Beach.
Oh, nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I think I just want to catch anyone up who's listening who doesn't know, because I'm actually super fascinated with the brain mapping and brain
Mhm.
waves, and like I want to try it. We've been talking about QEEG and brain mapping. Can you just give like a brief overview for someone who needs a little catch up? Like what exactly is it? What is the process and protocols like? How does it work?
Sure. So we do a QEEG brain map. So you put a kind of looks like a swim cap, and it's 19 points. And we read your brain waves. And so you come in, so we read your brain waves live, and then it goes through software that compares you through thousands of other brain maps based on your age and sex. So it's a comparative. And then you'll see different markers for anxiety, depression, insomnia, perseverance, rumination, things like that, focus, memory. And so you're compared to people within your age group and your sex. And then you can see what is normative or average for a person like you. And based off that, we can also see traumatic brain injury. And we go over the brain map with you. We tell you, hey, you might be, we like to correlate it to the symptoms. So we talk to the client, right? Like, hey, we're seeing these patterns. This can look like this can cause this. Do you feel fatigue? Do you have blood sugar issues? Do you have focus issues, memory issues? And depending on what they tell us, like, hey, this is correlating to this brain pattern. And then from there, we can offer different meditative practices, diet changes, exercise, and sleep are just the foundation of it all. Because if you're healthy, your whole system is better as well, you know? And then
Mhm.
from there, when you want to get more into it, we can, what is it called? We can create protocols for you to train down or regulate any dysregulation within your brain. And most of us carry some anxiety markers, some depression markers. When you lift those things, you start to feel more you. And that's
More present.
more whole,
Yeah. So
more
that's
you.
fascinating that you can put these 19 points on the brain and you can see almost anything in terms of like a mental challenge or a physical challenge.
Right. Yeah. And your brain is the central nervous system. It's like it's your whole body. Again, and thinking about it as that system. Because in Western medicine, we like to reduce everything to separate parts,
Yeah.
but it's a system. It's very
Yeah.
similar. You have to think about it in terms of like traditional Chinese medicine. Everything is a system. Everything affects the other part. You can't just, oh, it's just the heart or this or that. No, it's all of it together.
Yeah,
Again,
I
of holistic medicine.
I was receiving some acupuncture like a year ago, and the person that I was working with was trained in traditional Chinese medicine, and she was telling me that every hole on the face corresponds to an organ. So if you're having like a nose issue or an ear issue or an eye issue, that all corresponds to something on the inside.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
completely. And that's something also that I'm studying. Yahav, our acupuncturist, who's part of our retreat. Again, we include acupuncture because this is a modality, healing modality that we use. Everything in the retreat, we live, we practice. It's not this like random grab bag of things that we decide is like, no, we actually use this and it's been impactful for us. So Yahav, our acupuncturist, he's been teaching me. I've been taking classes with him the past maybe month and a half, 2 months for acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. And it's fascinating because everything is a philosophy of explaining phenomena, right? So everything that you see in the external correlates to your internal body, to your internal system, river, blood, trees, roots, our arms, our roots, our feet, things like that. So you realize that we are not apart from it. We are a part of it. And, to live more in harmony with the world because we're an
yeah,
expression of it.
exactly. I saw a picture online recently that shows like a tree with the roots, and then it shows like a human nervous system, and they're like basically like they look the same kind of.
No, exactly. It's beautiful. And the funny thing is that Alcides, my Huachumero teacher, he talks about it in the same way, exact same way. So I've been hearing this from two different people with completely different viewpoints or upbringings, and yet they're giving me the same message. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like
Mm-hmm.
there's no coincidence, right? And then you start to integrate that. He'd talk to me, he's like, Cinzia, be like the tree. I'm like, what do you mean? And now I get it,
So you said everyone over there at Tiwaz is pretty much living the tools that you preach to
You share.
others, or
Hmm. Yeah.
that you share with others. So you're doing like MMA, BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and brain mapping like still to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
So, and I also want to get into more details for the audience. So, when you do the brain map and then you can see markers for, let's say, anxiety or depression, what are the next steps in terms of you're training someone to heal themselves? So, what exactly does that look like?
So it depends on, for example, so based on my brain map, the software will recommend certain protocols. And we also talk to Dr. Richard Suter, Luke's mentor. We go over the brain maps with him, and he gives us more insight because he's been in the field for over 30 years. New Mind Technologies is his company, and he has over 500 clinics in the US. And so this is what a database that we have here at our disposal to talk to this man. And so we'll go over the brain maps with him, and he'll give us insights that we may not see. And then we also go over through the software that he created. And the software will recommend particular protocols. So for my pattern, for my like anxiety and depression, it's about emotional integration for me. So what I do is one protocol, it's eyes open. So I'm looking at a screen. I have electrodes in two parts of the back of my brain, like O1, O2. And this part of the brain is for emotional integration. So I have those two electrodes there. I'm looking
So
at a
you
screen.
so you have like electrodes taped to the back of your head?
It's like with a paste.
Okay. And but they're pasted onto the back of your head.
Exactly. And
Okay.
those 2 points. And then I'm looking at the screen, a laptop. And when it's an eyes open training. So when I'm in the correct brainwave, the screen lights up. And when it darkens, I'm out of that brainwave. And the first 5 sessions with that particular protocol were extremely agitating for me. Like I just was,
Really?
what is happening? And I'm watching something informative, something that has really no emotional reaction to it, but I'm agitated. I did not like it at all because it's just untangling. It's untangling trauma. It's bringing me out of depression. And so when your system goes into a depressive state, it's compartmentalizing. It like hits so much anxiety that your system can't handle it anymore. And it starts to compartmentalize so that you don't feel that much. So when you come out of the depressive state and you start feeling a whole lot more. So you feel irritated, you feel agitated, you feel more anxiety, you feel more crazy. And that's what happened. And so for me, I felt that emotional flux. It was very challenging.
Wow.
And now I'm still on that protocol, and I'm probably now in my 10th, no, I think my 15th session. And it's super chill, like really relaxing. I can see the change, and that's within 15 sessions.
Wow.
And the really cool thing about the training is that you can begin to see how your brain waves begin to layer properly, and they start to smooth out. They organize themselves. So you can watch this in real time. Like that
Wow.
is really cool. And
That
at the
is
beginning,
really cool.
my brain waves were like a mess of spaghetti, just, and then now they start to organize themselves.
That
You
is
know,
fascinating.
it's really incredible.
And is one of the reasons why it's so uncomfortable when you're doing it and you're learning to do it is because your system is actually feeling through the feelings that it needed to feel that were suppressed.
Exactly. Yeah, you're
So
kind
it's
of
so
like
uncomfortable because
being
you're feeling what was supposed to be felt when you were 3 or 5 or
forever ago. Exactly. And your system has been so like, it's so set in that pattern. Okay, we know this pattern, we know this pattern, we know this pattern. And then suddenly,
yeah.
oh, we're going to use new patterns now, right? So it's that kind of growing pains, right?
Do you ever get someone who you do a brain map on and they're just like smooth, like they got it?
Not quite. Not quite. Everybody's got something, and that's okay
Yeah.
because we just live in the world and life happens, you know?
I guess
Yeah.
most people that come to get hooked up for a brain map, they're coming for a reason anyways.
They're coming for a reason, and sometimes it can just be curiosity. But we all know when there's something a little bit off, you know? We may not know what, but I think your soul is like, hey, I need help. And
Yeah.
how much wisdom is there to listen to that voice?
Yeah. So you mentioned the way it works kind of is that you get like a flash on the screen when your brain is going into the correct brain waves or the more desirable brain waves, the smoother
Right.
ones. How do you trigger yourself to change your own brain waves?
Like when you're training with the neurofeedback,
Yeah.
you realize that there's a mind within a mind because you're not controlling anything. Your mind is doing it for you.
Hmm.
It's, and then, so for example, the alpha theta, the eyes closed with the tones, I wouldn't focus on anything. My brain would just figure it out,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like, I think Luke uses this analogy and I really like it, but it's pretty much you're putting a mirror in front of your brain for the first time and showing it, hey, you can do this. And the brain wants to learn. And so you realize that the brain is constantly doing these like a million little calculations without you having anything to do with it. You know, there's
Yeah.
nothing there that you can do. But with the alpha theta, so I got used to that program because I've been using it now for a year and a half. But I started to recognize the feeling of when I was in that theta state, when that brainwave was more prominent. And so now I can get there on my own, not necessarily like on cue immediately, but I know I can kind of settle into that feeling. I haven't
Is it
gone there yet with the eyes open, but I can access it with the eyes closed. And
wow. Okay.
almost like you,
So
when you train meditation, you're training that meditative state.
mhm.
You're doing the same thing with neurofeedback, but you have the feedback of that those tones or of that screen.
What does it feel like? Is it like a when you feel like you know you're dropping in, if you will, and you're getting it?
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
Is it like is it a feeling like an emotion or is it like a physical sensation or is it like kind of ineffable and hard to put into words?
It feels like that drop in you described. It feels as if, for me anyway, with that theta state, I start to feel very floaty suddenly, like I'm floating, or as if somebody put this heavy, comfortable imaginary blanket over me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going in. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, okay. Cuz I meditate and it was really hard for me in the beginning. And now I'm at a place where I feel like I can mostly just choose to go into meditation. And what it feels like for me is like any voice or internal chatter,
Mhm.
my attention just doesn't lock on to it.
True. Yeah.
And I don't know how to like describe that, but it is kind of like a feeling like I'm just aware and I'm just like allowing that chatter to kind of dissipate.
Mm. You're finding
Um,
that stillness. It'd be really cool to brain map you.
I really want to do it. I really want to
It'd
do
be really
it.
cool.
Yeah, I want to see where I'm at. Um, hopefully I will do it soon and then we can have a follow-up. I like to do like a follow-up with Luke, a follow-up with you and be like, "Okay, here's what I learned."
That'd be super amazing. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're texting actually. We're in contact over text and we're figuring out like maybe sending me some equipment that I need because he said you can do it remotely.
Exactly. Yeah. We have home trainers in the US where we send you a small amp, like 2 channel amp, and the software. And then it's very user friendly. And so the software shows you the placements, has you test out the electrodes, that you're not getting any artifact or electrical interference. You put that on for yourself and you go. My
I've
mom is
all
one of our trainers.
she trains other people.
No, no, no. She trains herself.
Oh, she trains herself.
Mhm.
Nice. And so, what other kind of things do people heal? Like we talk a lot about anxiety and depression, and I love that. I want to see where I'm at with that in
Mm.
my life. But what are some other things that you've seen healed from this technology?
So kind of like the foundation of everything is first. regulating those two hemispheres of the brain, the left and right, and lifting that anxiety, depression, because then you can work on other things.
Yeah.
So then you can access those like spiritual states. You can focus on reaching new meditative heights or peak performance, flow states, creative states, right? But first, it has to begin with that foundation of removing yourself from anxiety, depression, beginning to feel, and then you get to emotionally integrate. Then you feel more whole. Then once you're not focused on that hypervigilance or that depressive state, from that place you can expand outward,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
feel more you, and then see creativity, focus, memory, traumatic brain injury, bringing down that inflammatory process. So it can be so many different things, but first it begins with regulating the brain.
I love that. I'm also excited about trying this because one of the early types of therapy that I did a few years ago when I was really like diving into myself and exploring healing modalities and really wanting to like heal myself and my stuff.
Mm.
One of the early things I did with a therapist is called EMDR.
I've heard
Um,
of this, yes.
so, and there's a couple, I'll talk a little bit about the stuff that I did. One is just while talking to her, my therapist, I use a device called a TheraTapper, which
Okay.
is like a one basically pad goes in each pocket and they vibrate on alternating sides of the body. And the idea is that while you're talking about your stuff and you're processing it verbally, that the alternating stimulation on sides of alternating sides of the body is meant to sort of balance your hemispheres.
Wow.
That was like one of the first therapy modalities that I ever tried, and I found great success with it. I actually recommend it to people. Anyone who has anxiety, I would try EMDR. And
Yeah.
there's a great app too that you can use. I think it's just called Anxiety Release EMDR app or something. And the way that one works is you put ear pods in and it plays alternating tones in either ear. So you could do it alone at your home and you can kind of bring to mind whatever your is giving you anxiety or depression in the
Wow.
moment.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and then with the alternating tones, it's supposed to bring that balance in the hemispheres.
Yeah, please message me that. I'd like to check that out. That'd be really
Yeah,
cool.
I'm just gonna make a note to send it to you. EMDR app send. Uh,
Thank you.
Yeah. And I also so I'm really excited to try the QEEG because it feels like kind of like the next evolution
Right.
of that process for me. And I guess like self-exploration is like a little bit of a personal hobby as well.
Yeah,
But
and
I
it's
also
why not?
I think you might find interesting. Then the next thing my therapist introduced me to is called IFS, which is
Mhm.
internal family systems.
Right. I just recently heard about this too.
So it's to me, I tell people it's like a shamanic experience, but without any plants,
Mm.
just with your therapist guiding you through. And the idea with that is if you experience some type of trauma, then there's pieces of yourself within yourself that sort of fracture and
Hmm.
they kind of don't think of themselves as the whole. They think
Hmm.
it's like your inner child or your inner teenager or whatever. And with IFS, your therapist guides you to kind of go internal and communicate with those pieces, and then address whatever their needs are, so that you can
Right.
reintegrate back into the whole.
Yes. That sounds that sounds
so
like part of my healing journey as well.
it's a great time over here. um
One of the running joke we have at the retreat place I work at with my coworkers is like we're in a constant state of processes. There's no escaping a process.
yeah, the whole thing is a process.
The whole thing is the process, and you have to get to a point where you have to laugh at it a little bit. You have to find humor in it, because otherwise it's just, okay, compassion, compassion, and oh no, pit of despair. you know. So keeping your humor, however, where you can find it. And I'll see this when I watch Umedo. He looks at me, he's like, yeah, Cinzia, I'm a book of algebra problems with more problems than solutions. And to bring that levity, to bring that comedic relief to it, and that helps me out a lot because I'm a very serious person. I was a very serious kid, and
Yeah.
I know why. I know why. And so now, for me, I'm learning, I'm unlearning a lot of things. I'm reparenting myself, right? And I'm learning how to allow life to surprise me. I'm learning how to surprise myself, and laugh at myself and things like that, not to get so caught in my head.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about the other day that you reminded me when you just mentioned is the concept of unpatterning, unlearning, and then relearning and reparenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about that concept a little bit?
Oh, for sure. I'm in the middle of it now. So, Luke, my mom is a single mom and she raised three kids. Okay. So she wasn't around very much because she had to work a lot. And so we were very solitary, we were very independent, and I had to be very responsible from a very early age. And you kind of take on that caregiver, very responsible parent figure very young. And so because of this, I'm quite an overachiever. I'm a perfectionist. I'm very serious, and it all fell into that. Like, I need to do things to validate my life, my existence, things like that. And constantly go doing, right? Also, as a major distraction to not feel. So I don't, I joke around and sometimes I feel like I have the emotional landscape of a pea because I don't get feelings. Like I'm learning feelings, I'm 38 years old and I'm learning feelings. So one of the things that Luke is really good about is encouragement and getting really excited about stuff. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do it. I've had to learn how to receive encouragement. I've had to learn how to feel excited about things because excitement and surprises for me growing up were not safe things,
Mhm.
were like threats or what's going to happen or the other shoe's going to drop or something bad's going to happen. So how I correlate to excitement and surprise are very different. And because we were kind of those latchkey kids, there wasn't anybody around to talk to you about, oh, a good grade or whatever accomplishment you had. So again, I was very private. I didn't talk about accomplishments. So I didn't receive encouragement. And my mom is extremely encouraging. But through those formative years, I did not receive that. So I
Mhm.
don't know what that looks like.
Mhm.
So I'm learning to like emote. I'm learning
Yeah.
to use my face.
Beautiful.
I'm learning to, give encouragement and receive it and, express happiness and all these things. So sometimes
You
I feel like a robot. I feel like there's such an emotional delay for me, but I am getting a lot better about it.
in this kind of plant medicine space, we talk about a lot, you got to feel it to heal it, and like
Yeah.
feeling all those dark things so you can release them. I think
Yeah.
it's also important to mention, though, we should also save space for ourselves to feel the good things. And like when you like you mentioned, like getting that grade and not having someone there to like tell you good job, it's important to remind ourselves, like, is we're feeling it to heal it. Also, when you do something you're proud of, like, take a moment to feel that too.
For sure. Can I share a funny story with you?
Please.
So in June, I went to visit my mom for her birthday in California. I haven't been back to the US in about 9 years. So went to Hermosa Beach, and it so happens that in San Diego, the black belt who gave my black belt his black belt is there, Barrett Yoshida. And this is like celebrity person to me. A lot of my jujitsu game is from Barrett via Bruno. I'm like, Mom, please let's go down to San Diego. And on Google Maps, of course, it tells you 2 hours. It was 4 hours on the highway,
Yeah.
as I'm sure you know how that goes. So
Oh,
4 hours,
yeah.
da da da. We left early enough to leave like a 30-minute window before the class started. So I show up on a Friday. I'm having my internal panic attack. So like very stoic face, but on the inside I'm dying. And I show up and there's Barrett. He's about my size. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm like, I'm Bruno's blue belt. Hi, nice to meet you. And he's like, yeah, okay. And on Friday we don't have class. We do open rounds. And I'm thinking, shit, I'm going to get my ass kicked. I haven't trained outside of Peru. I haven't trained in 2 weeks. Bruno had the baby. We have class every once in a while. Like, I am not prepared for open rounds. Okay. So I show up, and then 6 men show up. It's all men and me. I'm like, okay, this is like home because here in the valley, I'm the only girl most of the time, you know?
Mhm.
Like, okay, I'm used to this then. Then this woman shows up, and I'm super excited to see another woman. And I'm smiling at her like a goofball and like, hi, my name's Cinzia, good to meet you. Stone face from her. Like, okay, fine. And so before this begins, I tell my mom, Mom, we just drove 4 hours. Please, I have 1 hour. Please record everything. So I'm that little kid. You know, I finally get my mother here to like witness something that I'm really excited about, like me being excited about something. So I'm like, Mom, please, please, please record something. Please, all of it. So we start, and we start standing. And here in the valley, I usually start standing. The person's on the ground because they're usually bigger than me. So it's just to kind of average something out. So the girl and I start standing, and I ask her, hey, it was my first time. Can you explain to me what we're going to do? She's like, well, we'll spar, 5-minute round, and then you switch partners. I'm like, okay, cool. And she looks at me, and she says, have you trained before? And I tell her, yes. So we start, and you can tell a lot about a person from the moment they grip you. And she
Mm.
gripped me, and I think to myself, I'm going to be okay. And then I submit this person 3 times in 5 minutes, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm having the best jujitsu of my life right now because I rarely train with women. So I can't use my strength. I have to be really technical. I don't get away with all the submissions that I could because someone's usually much bigger than me. So easily, this is Bruno talking through me. It's like I destroy her. I'm really happy about it. And then I go and I spar the rest of the guys, and nobody submits me. Like really good jujitsu, really fun. And I spar with the girl again, and I submit her another 3 times in another 5-minute round. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. I turn around, having that like movie image in my mind of that proud parent recording stuff that you see in all these TV shows and American movies. No, bless you, mom, but she's in the back of the gym on her phone, and I have an internal meltdown.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh, I go over to her and I'm like, Mom, I asked for one thing, like the one thing. We drove 4 hours. And she looks at me. I'll always remember this face. She like looks at me really confused, and she puckers her face a little bit. She's like, I think I remember you saying that to me. I'm like, oh. Anyway, so I had a mini meltdown for 15 minutes, and it was really hilarious though. One, because I got to kind of relive that moment in my childhood, right? But at the same time, I'm an adult now, and I can acknowledge that feeling, parent myself through it, and then express it, right? So what an opportunity that was, even if it was whatever it was. I can't even tell you it was disappointing. I really had to laugh at it. Like even at 37, you know, you can get sent back to those little spaces.
Yeah.
And then that's the healing though, is like, how can I do better for me or hold space for me in this moment? And
Yeah.
it was really cool. And I'll always have my memories. So
I think that's a great story. And I think actually that that highlights like one of the, in my opinion, big things about being your own healer
mm,
is it's realizing that you don't need something from someone else. You can hold space
that
for
power.
yourself.
Yeah.
You can hold space for yourself, and to me, like that's when you heal yourself.
Exactly. So it was a really good moment. And I got out of the gym, and I called Bruno, Bruno. I did, I have good jujitsu. It was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. I want to check in with how we're doing on time. We've been going about an hour.
Mm,
If you have a little bit more time, would you want to share a little bit with the world about the medicines that you're serving right now? You mentioned in the very beginning of the interview, I think you mentioned Bufo and Huachuma are the
yes.
medicines you're serving. Would you want to talk a little bit about those?
Sure, that would be great. I'll start with Huachuma because it's the relationship that I have the longest. And it's very interesting to me because, like I said before, I didn't come to Peru for plant medicines. I came to Peru ultimately to find myself, and I feel like there's so much destiny within that now where I didn't realize that before. And my first Huachuma experience was in 2013, and I saw a lot of ancestral images, again, not really knowing what that meant. And then to have it come full circle in this way where now I'm working in a retreat space and I'm translating the Huachuma ceremonies and then holding space and then having my teacher or Alcides, my coworker, become my teacher, my friend, my brother. And then to continue with this work of the medicine, it's very dear to my heart. And so Huachuma is the San Pedro cactus, grandfather. And in my experience, it is a deep heart opener. And you are able to begin integrating parts of yourself that maybe you haven't been paying attention to, or maybe you haven't wanted to face, right? So Alcides always explains Huachuma, the grandfather, as being very noble and very gentle. And he most definitely can be. But when you place a resistance there, it's like the medicine knows, it's like we are going to go through that wall, and it's unrelenting because it's also a prolonged medicine, right? It can be 6, 8, 12, 18, 24 hours, So if you resist, it's going to be a long ride for you. And again, that lesson of just surrender, let go, feel what you need to feel that guilt, that sadness, whatever it is, feel that joy and that happiness. And Huachuma with these mountain hikes have been extremely powerful for me because, again, I love the mind. I spent so much time here that I need to connect everything, right? So it
Mhm.
brings it out of the intellectual, out of the visions too, right? And brings it into your body. So with these hikes, with this pilgrimage, it's checking where you are physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, okay, you have to go up this mountain, connect with yourself, connect with your breath, and enjoy it. Even enjoy it when your legs are burning, enjoy it when your lungs feel like they're just going to burst. Enjoy the beat of your heart. Remember that you have this. And continuing up, and you get to this peak of this mountain, what a celebration that is. What a way to show you've overcome your own limitations. And I think Huachuma can teach you so much in the present time. It's not in a darkened room, it's not at night, it's you with yourself outside, with nature. Ideally, at least that's how we serve medicine,
Mhm.
connecting with that. So Huachuma has changed my life, really has.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
then,
Thank you for sharing.
thank you. And with the Bufo Alvarious, the sapo, this was quite a surprise for me. I was quite scared when, you're quite scared when you smoke it the first time because it's like, what's going to happen? You hear all these things, it's intense, it comes on really quick, and it does. Within maybe a matter of seconds, after you've inhaled, you're going to forget exhaling. And at least for me, it sends me to this very deep, deep space in my body where I feel so many energetic releases. And we're energetic beings, right? And we forget this. And we forget that our thoughts are energy, our feelings are energy, and they manifest in our body. So at least this is my theory that for me, the Bufo, in my experience, helps release this energy that we've accumulated.
Mhm.
And one of my first experiences with it, it sent me so far back into myself, like to the origin of my soul. It felt so deep. And I heard a voice that was my voice. And it was like, why don't you trust yourself? You know? And then in that moment, I feel this like release in my heart. And I didn't realize how long I'd been holding on to that contraction. It
Mm.
was almost as if I had my heart in a vice for that long.
Wow.
And I was able to release it. And then you feel that spaciousness and thinking, okay, I cannot let that build back up now
Mm.
that I know how it feels like to be gone. And so again, what an honor and a privilege to be able to serve these two medicines. It's very serious to me, and Like anything in my life, I do not take it lightly. And it's been a blessing and an honor to be able to share this with other people.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for doing that work.
Thank you.
So is there anything else that you want to share with the world about healing modalities or just anything that you want the world to know before we wrap up?
I think the most important thing with all of this healing is one, have compassion for yourself because it is not linear. You will go all over the place and you might find yourself in that same hole and wonder, well, I thought I was done here. So when you find yourself in that space, have grace and compassion because that's a gift that we have in life, you know. Value your life and like, okay, there's something for me to learn here. And
Mhm.
maybe I didn't get it the first time. But the detail is allowing yourself to learn from it and believe in your healing. Really believe in it. Oftentimes we forget or we think that we're broken and you're not broken. You can overcome it. You are whole and you are loved and you deserve it. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved. And if you need to say that to yourself every morning, do it. And I share this because this is what I had to do. It
Oh,
felt
wow.
clunky. It felt clunky and awkward, but I hug myself in the morning. I go through my list of gratitude. I thank my ancestors. I thank my grandparents. I thank my parents. I thank myself. And I tell myself, Cinzia, I love you. Cinzia, I'm always there for you. And that helps. Your soul hears it. Your inner child hears it. Every cell in your body believes that it will take its next heartbeat, that it will take its next breath. And so if you have this constant belief in every cell in your body, why don't you believe in yourself? And start there. And yeah.
Very
And
well
you feel
said.
everything. And you have to feel everything. You can't
Got
avoid feeling everything.
You got to feel it all.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to come try the QEEG brain mapping or maybe something more intense like Bufo or Huachuma or any of those things, where can they find you?
They can find us on our website. So it would be tiwazawakening.com. And I think you can share the link because I know the spelling is a little bit strange, but TIWAZ awakening.com. And you'll have our contact info, our email, and everything. And we're there, you know, a couple of dorks in the Sacred Valley doing a lot of different things.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story with the world and for sharing all these different healing modalities. And hopefully, we'll do a follow up after I do some brain mapping.
Yeah, it'd be perfect. Again, thank you so much for the trust and thank you for the call and the interest and speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And bye, everyone.